Hey everyone, welcome back to Loopy Studio. Today I'm here to talk about Reminders of Him, the latest Colleen Hoover adaptation that just came out last weekend in theaters. I will be talking about spoilers in this for both the book and the movie, so if you have not read either and you don't want to be spoiled, I recommend you go figure your stuff out right now, read it, watch it, whatever you want to do, and then come back to this. But yeah, again, spoilers ahead. So as I did for the first two Colleen Hoover adaptations, It Ends With Us and Regretting You, I read the book first. I just wanted to know the source material, and frankly, I probably would have been fine without it. But I mean, the adaptations have been pretty faithful overall. They've especially Regretting You and Reminders of Him have both been pretty faithful to the book. So I do appreciate having that source material to look back on. But just reading the synopsis for the book real quick, it says here. After serving 5 years in prison for a tragic mistake, Kenna Rowan returns to the town where it all went wrong, hoping to reunite with her 4-year-old daughter. But the bridges Kenna burned are proving impossible to rebuild. Everyone in her daughter's life is determined to shut Kenna out, no matter how hard she works to prove herself. The only person who hasn't closed the door on her completely is Ledger Ward, a local bar owner and one of the few remaining links to Kenna's daughter. But if anyone were to discover how Ledger is slowly becoming an important part of Kenna's life, both would risk losing the trust of everyone important to them. The two form a connection despite the pressure surrounding them, but as their romance grows, so does the risk. Kenna must find a way to absolve the mistakes of her past in order to build a future out of hope and healing. So going into this, I knew this was one of her more popular books, so I was definitely more hopeful with reading it. I thought It Ends With Us was decent. I didn't like Regretting You a whole lot. So I thought this was definitely a step up from those two for sure. It was definitely the best book of hers that I've read, and I will say it was the best movie out of the three. So I think Colleen wrote a good story overall, even if I didn't think her writing was great every part of it. I think the overall story of Kenna seeking redemption for her mistake is a powerful one. You know, wanting to reunite with her daughter that she's never gotten to meet is a powerful story. The parents grieving is there's a lot of really good stuff in this book and a lot of good things set up. I don't think she followed through as best as she could, but I think the overall story that she wrote and that she displayed was a good story overall. I thought the movie was also well done, and I'm going to have a hot take about how I feel about the book compared to the movie at the end. So stay tuned for that. I'll kind of talk about which one I like better at the end, as I usually do for these book and movie talks. But yeah, so what I liked. So I like that there was an overarching plot that wasn't solely focused on the romance. I know Colleen loves her romance. I know these are romance novels to begin with, but I really liked the redemption story that Colleen was trying to tell here. I thought she did a really good job at making us sympathize with Kenna, but also kind of get frustrated with her at times. We really felt a lot of emotions with her character. And I think because we felt all those things, it just made her a better character because Kenna's flawed, but we also kind of realize that maybe she doesn't deserve all of the backlash that she's getting, and how everyone's treating her. Maybe she deserves better than that. So I think because we kind of go back and forth on how we feel about her, it makes her it makes her a better character, as opposed to, in my opinion, the characters from Regretting You, which I just don't think were fleshed out enough. Here, I think Kenna is a very fleshed out character. She's really well written. You just understand her trauma. Even if you can't relate to it, I think it's well written because you really understand how much she wants to make right by her mistake, how much she wants to meet her daughter. You really understand that through her writing. With Ledger, you really understand the predicament he's in. He's loyal to Scotty. He's loyal to Grace and Patrick. He's loyal to Diem. But still, he feels some type of way about Kenna. Something about her draws himself to him. I mean, of course, she's beautiful, as we see in the movie. It's not just that, though. He sees a girl who got her daughter taken away from her, and he doesn't think that's fair. And while he's, still upset with her, he goes to realize as the book and the movie progress that she's not as bad. He even says we've all been wrong about her. You've taken the worst moment of her life and turned it into who she is. And that's a really powerful progression from, he started out hating her, to wanting the whole world for her. and that's like it's a very powerful story. I know I'm saying powerful a lot. I think a lot of this story is powerful. But it's a very good progression for his character too. So I think both Kenna and Ledger's characters were really well written. However, I didn't love the romance. And like I don't know. I understand that these are romance novels. I just sometimes think that stories would be better if they were just written if the relationship was platonic. That's just my opinion. I think this is one of those where I think it would have been more powerful if Ledger stepped in to help Kenna and he helped her as a friend, because you still would have had the whole thing with him like not knowing if he can trust her, him being angry with her. You could have carried a lot of those elements into a platonic friendship, but it's Colleen Hoover and she writes romance novels, so I understand that it had to be a romance, but I just didn't love it, and I didn't love how it. To me, it felt like the romance took up way too much of the book, at least. And I think the movie you could argue that to a degree. I think the most interesting part of this entire story is Grace and Patrick and how they feel, what their emotions are, how they feel about the whole thing, because I really feel like you can understand what they're going through and what they're feeling. I mean, their son died. The his girlfriend killed him to their eyes, left him at the scene, was not remorseful at the trial, pled guilty for it. It just they have no reason to like her, and her parental rights got terminated, so now they're raising their son's kid, and they probably don't want to be doing that. They probably just want to be grandparents. They don't want to have to be parents. So yeah, I mean, I completely understand what shoes they're in. It's very challenging to be grieving parents, yet you have this constant reminder of your son in your life every day. And so I completely understand where they're coming from. But my issue with this is I just don't think they flesh out Grace and Patrick's characters nearly enough. And granted, in the book, we don't get to see their point of view. The only thing we get to see from them is through Kenna and Ledger's perspectives. We don't get to see how they feel. So in the movie, the thing I was hoping for there is that they would kind of change that and let us into Grace and Patrick's like mind a bit more. And in the movie, I will say they do that. Not nearly as much as I would have liked, but they do a decent job at giving us more into how Grace and Patrick feel. So some examples of that, we get to see when so for one example, sorry, for one example of this is when Patrick catches Kenna and Ledger at the mansion, and we see Ledger go back to his house and he punches him twice, but he's not angry. He's angry, but he's more just like cold and like grieving. You can tell like he just can't deal with this. He's just upset, but he's not angry like he is in the book. And I like that change. It makes him just a bit more two-dimensional rather than just being this angry, I'm going to punch you character. You can tell he's just upset about the whole thing, but he's not angry. I mean, he punched him, which is like it's, usually people do when they're angry, but he just seemed more upset and tired and frustrated about the whole thing more than anything. I thought, and this is something I liked better too, I thought with Grace, she was much better written in the movie, because the thing I didn't like about her in the book is that she reads Kenna's, like what the recount of what happened the night of the accident. She reads that, and yet she doesn't, like, she reads it and she goes to Kenna and is like basically like, I'm so sorry about everything, and like hugs her and is crying. And to me, I felt like that was an unrealistic reaction from everything we've seen from this point to it didn't make any sense for her to react that way. It was way too fast. So in the movie, we see she just says, I think Scotty would have wanted you to meet his daughter, which is a bit cruel of her to say considering that is Kenna's daughter that she gave birth to, but it's a way more realistic reaction for Grace where we knew her in this whole time. So I like that change. And I also liked in the kitchen at the end when Kenna comes up to her and Grace is, clearly struggling to keep it together, seeing DM get reunited with her mother. I think she's feeling a lot of things, and Kenna just hugs her and Grace says we move forward. And she says that in both the book and the movie. But to me, I feel like Grace just showing a little bit of grace, no pun intended, in the movie made way more sense than where she got to in the book, which was just way too fast, way too rushed. Because that's my biggest concern with the book is that it's the ending is so rushed. Like, once Grace and Patrick read the notebooks, they're like fine with Kenna being totally a part of Diem's life. They just let her. There's no like no slow like gradual like build to it. They just let her. It's all fine. They forgive her everything, and they're like hugging her. It's just way too fast in my opinion. And in the movie, you can see that Grace and Patrick, they're not totally sure about this. Grace is even watching from the window. She looks a bit worried when Kenna and Diem are talking. But like, you realize at the end, they realize it's the right thing and it was worth it. So I thought they portrayed their emotions way better in the movie. However, I still don't feel like it was enough. Like, I think I would have really liked to have seen a conversation with Kenna, Grace, and Patrick earlier on. And they're like, no, we don't want you to have a part of Diem's life. And then by the end, they turn around. But the fact that they don't talk with Kenna this whole time just seems a bit unfair. So I think I would have liked that in both the book and the movie. I don't know. I just feel like we're waiting for like tension, and the tension just doesn't really get there until really there's not much tension until Patrick catches them in the mansion. Everything up till then has just been internal tension, but we don't get anything external until then. And I think that's a problem with both the book and the movie, is that there's just not enough happening to excite you until you're like three-fourths into it. I think they could have done a better job at like bringing in more action throughout to like keep you engaged instead of just throwing everything at the end. Because I thought in both the book and the movie, there's way too many scenes of just them in the car together talking about random stuff. I get that they're trying to show them bonding, but I got a bit tired of seeing them in the truck. It just got old, in my opinion. But that's just me. I know the orange truck is supposed to be this setting for them, this iconic setting, but I didn't particularly. I think I just kind of got old of it. I also think there was just a bit too much music in the movie. Like, in a lot of scenes where we just see music playing instead of dialogue. And I didn't love that. I think it was a good soundtrack. I just think they used music too much in it, where we could have gotten instead some really good, well-developed scenes. I just feel like the dialogue is just lacking a little bit in the movie. Where in the book, I feel like we get this good, solid dialogue, but in the movie, it just feels a little bit toned down, except when we get to the end, where there's some good stuff there at the end. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's like good scene throughout. I don't think the dialogue is as sharp as it is in the books. That is one weakness I have for the movie. And granted, the other two Colleen Hoover adaptations struggle with dialogue too. It's just the dialogue just isn't really strong. It just doesn't feel totally realistic, like something that humans would actually say. So I think that's what the movie has going against it. However, the movie has a lot of things going right for it too. Like I said, I think they portrayed Grace and Patrick's emotions better. I would have liked it a little bit more. Like, for instance, we see Kenna leaving her apartment at one point, and Grace is, like, in her van nearby. And I just think that you could see Grace and Patrick struggling. I just don't think we could have gone even deeper into it, but I'm okay with what they gave us. I think it was good enough. I think they balanced the characters' arcs better in the movie. Like, I feel like we got a decent amount of Grace and Patrick. We got a decent amount of Kenna and Ledger too. So I was happy with all of that. I think in the movie, one thing I do like better is I like that they show some glimpses of Scotty's like death and how it affected people right after. I would have liked a flashback of seeing how Ledger found out about Scotty's death. We do get to see Grace and Patrick learning about his death, and then we see a shot of him in the morgue. So I did like that. I would have liked to have maybe seen a little bit more of the trial and maybe exactly what Kenna was feeling, but that kind of felt a bit rushed. But I like that we got a little bit more to the immediate fallout of his death, because we don't get to see Grace and Patrick's reaction in the book, obviously, because we don't get to see their perspective. Speaking of the Grace and Patrick thing, I know I've talked a lot about them, but the one thing they took out of the movie, they took out this whole thing of Grace and Patrick kind of being skeptical of Kenna. Because in the book, we have this whole thing where at dinner, Grace catches Kenna with her eyes open while they pray, and then Kenna catches, or not Kenna, Grace catches Kenna with the cigarette while Scotty's peeing outside. So we kind of get these glimpses where we can see they don't really like Kenna, but in the movie they kind of take those away. We don't get to see a lot of Scotty and Kenna before Scotty dies. I think it was okay. I think we got enough. I think anything more than that wouldn't have felt super necessary. I understand that they were trying to tell more of Kenna and Ledger's romance. Where in the book it feels a little bit more equal. We a little more equal between Scotty and Ledger. They definitely go more towards Ledger, the emphasis on that to really sell that romance. Um, but I think it was okay for them to take away Grace and Patrick's pre-existing skepticism of Kenna. I don't think that was necessary. I think just the fact that they're upset with what she did to their son, I think that was enough to drive their animosity towards her. I'm glad they removed a lot of that. I just didn't think that part of it was necessary. What else? I like that they added in flashbacks with Scotty and Ledger because we don't see a scene with the two of them in Ledger's point of view. We don't get a flashback with them. In the movie we get two flashbacks with them to take the place of some of that stuff I just mentioned with the four, Grace, Patrick, Kenna, and Scotty. They take a lot of that out. Instead, they give us some Scotty and Ledger scenes, and I like that. I like that we get to see that friendship and get like a little bit of background there that we don't get in the book. So I did like that addition. I like that we saw a little glimpse of Ledger in the NFL too, because we don't get to see that in the book. So I like that they added in that part of it. I do think that was necessary. So I'm here, I think as I think about it, they added some good stuff into the movie that wasn't in the book. And usually they don't really do that. Usually they just take away so much stuff. And they made a lot of changes. For example, they took away Ledger's parents. And I was okay with that. I mean, his parents were kind of funny, but they were kind of dingy too. And I just didn't think they were necessary for the movie, and they weren't. We do get a mention that they live in Florida. But I just didn't think it was all that necessary. So I was okay that they took that out. I think it being Patrick that catches them in the mansion rather than Ledger's parents made way more sense. I like that change a lot. Another thing that they change is they take out the stuff with Kenna's mom, and I think that was okay because I think that was kind of underdeveloped in the book. They kind of threw that in, but they didn't really go really far with it, and I was okay with them taking it out of the movie because I would have wanted that to get the attention it deserved, and it just wouldn't have gotten that in the movie, so I was okay with them taking that out. They take away a lot of Ledger's ex-fiance, and I was okay with that. I'm glad that they mention it because I think it was important for Kenna to see how devoted Ledger was to Diem, that he would throw away his relationship with someone who didn't care about her as much as he did, or that wasn't willing to include her in their lives. I think it was important for that, but I'm glad it didn't go any further. I didn't want I didn't want that to be a central thing with the plot. I didn't think it was necessary. I also like that they took away Ledger being jealous of Kenna and Roman. I didn't think that was necessary, and I'm glad they took that out too. I think by taking Ledger's parents out, we got to see Roman get a bit more to do in the movie, and I like that change too. I really like the actor who portrayed him. I think he was very, very charismatic, very handsome, very genuine. So I liked Roman a lot. I also liked Marianne. I think she was really funny in the movie. So I thought the bar scenes were good in the movie. I think they translated really well from the book to the movie. They also make Grace and Patrick show up to the bar, which makes Kenna run home, leading to Ledger and Kenna getting together. So I like that change too. Again, I think they just did more with Grace and Patrick in the movie, and I really like that. But, they keep the central plot beats. We get to see Ivy, and I really like the scene in both the book and the movie. I thought that translated really well. They kind of de-age the landlord a bit, and they introduce a little plot that doesn't really go anywhere, but it's with the landlord and this guy in the complex who plays his guitar. It's kind of a minor thing. It didn't need to be in there, but I was okay with it. What else? Lady Diana, she was really funny. And in the movie, she was kind of that comedic relief that I think we needed from the movie. And people in the audience definitely laughed at her parts for sure. I like with the car accident. The car accident was hard to watch. Everyone in the theater kind of jumped when it happened because of just how loud and jarring it was, especially because the movie on its own spends a lot of time with this peaceful scenery of driving, and then we suddenly get the reversal of that with a car crash at night, and it's not peaceful at all. But I like that they made the change that instead of Kenna just being like, "I want to die because I thought I killed you," she's trying to get ran over on the road. She's gonna jump off of her like apartment balcony. I like that they changed it to her just leaving him to go get help, and then she just passed out in her room. I thought that made way more sense, and it's more realistic. I think she thought she killed him because she didn't feel the pulse, but she was still just trying to go get help, and no one stopped. And I like that change rather than her just being like, "Crap, I killed you. I want to die." I thought that was very extreme. So I definitely understood that more for sure. The girl who plays Diem was adorable in the movie. I liked the little dynamic that they had with Grace, Patrick, Diem, and Ledger. I thought was really sweet. I think that translated really well. So I'm conflicted about the chemistry with Kenna and Ledger. I thought Kenna and Scotty had decent chemistry. I think Rudy did a good job as Scotty. It's weird seeing him in this. I was a downgrade from Outer Banks, obviously, but he had a decent role in it. I think he played the role of Scotty well, someone hungry for adventure, someone who was just genuinely a good guy. Just like he like kind of like lit, he like lit up whoever was in the room. I think he portrayed that really well because that's really who JJ was. But I don't know. I think the chemistry with Kenna and Ledger was okay. I think they had a good like vibe that I just didn't really see as romantic. I think I just saw it way more as like a two people laughing about music. I think it very well could have just been a friendship, but I understand why it had to be a romance. There was like some cute scenes with them. I think they shared some cute glances. It was the sex scene. It was cute. It was hot, but I did like an interracial couple. I did like that they casted it that way rather than just two white people. I did like that change. I don't think the chemistry was the strongest, but I also didn't think it was super weak. It was miles better than Morgan and Jonah and Regretting You, because that's some of the worst chemistry I've ever seen in a movie. So this was definitely a step up there. But I'm trying to think what else there is to talk about. I mean, I really feel like I've nailed a lot of the major plot points. Again, I think you've heard me say I like a lot of things better in the movie, but in the book, I think the dialogue's better written, and I think that's just to be expected. When you're writing a novel, it's very different than writing a screenplay. So I do think the dialogue's better in the book. But beyond that, I can't think of much else that I think the book is better in. I think the movie really covers the basis of the book and then adds on extra, like little tidbits to make, I think, the story overall better. So I'm gonna make this a hot take. I think the movie is better, guys. You might be like, what? I think the movie's better. I think the movie just delves into Grace and Patrick more, and I really appreciate that. I think they make changes that I think are just better. Like taking out Ledger's parents, I think was okay. I think taking out Kenna's mom was okay. I think changing Kenna's emotions on the night of the accident, I thought that was good. So I think they made a lot of changes that were actually really good for the plot. I also like that they took away some of the T-ball stuff. I didn't think that was necessary. I didn't need to see the whole subplot with the T-ball moms and gossiping about Kenna. That just wasn't necessary. Taking out Ledger's ex, that whole thing I think was necessary. So yeah, I think they took out a lot of unneeded stuff. They took out the scene with her kissing the prison guard that I didn't think that was just weird. I'm glad they took that out. That had no business being in there. But they showed all the scenes that mattered. So they didn't miss a beat there. So I thought it was a very faithful adaptation. I thought the actors all did a great job. As far as scenes that kind of like made me emotional, there weren't many. I do think the first time I got emotional, it was two scenes that happened back to back. The first one was Kenna meeting her daughter. I thought that was really well done. And then the second one was where Grace says to Kenna, "We move forward." that was thanks to Lauren Graham. Lauren Graham killed this movie. She was awesome. She did such a good job. I mean, her and Bradley Whitford were really good in this. All the actors were great. I didn't think there was a single bad actor in this. Even Lainey Wilson did a decent job in the role she was given. So I thought, again, I think everyone was good in this. I really liked Roman too. I think Roman, in my opinion, was better in the movie. I think they gave him a bit more to work with. So, but yeah. Comment down below. Do you prefer the book or the movie? Did you like the movie? Like, I know a lot of people just went in to see this because why not? Even if they're not a Colleen Hoover fan, even if they don't read her books, they're just like, why not go and see this? So, but yeah, I'm curious about Verity. My mom enjoyed Verity. I hear mixed things about it, so I'm not totally sure if I'll like it or not, but I'm definitely gonna read it, and give the movie a try. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye everyone.